Hi, my name is Rob Gordon, and I'm conducting a citizen's investigation of the Medical Board of California. I've determined, as many others have, that this organization has become hopelessly corrupt and dysfunctional, but I won't be going into that too much in this video. Rather, this is the first in a series of videos I'll be making to see what we can learn about the board members themselves, so we can learn what went wrong with this organization and if there's anything we can do about it. There's 13 members of the Medical Board of California, and in this video I will just be covering the approach and activities of the board president, Kristina Lawson. This is the bio for Ms. Lawson that I found on the webpage for the Medical Board of California. It says that she's served as a member of the Medical Board since 2015, so that's an entire decade. That's a long time. She is an attorney, and she is the managing partner and chief executive of Hanson Bridgette, a California law firm with 6 offices throughout the state. She also serves as the chair of the executive committee and board of directors for the Bay Area Council. That is a very, very powerful organization in the Bay Area. I'm in San Diego, so I have no connection with them. But they governors love using this organization as kind of a incubator for board members and other organizations throughout the state, other public organizations. So that's a very, very connected organization there. So she was also a member of the Walnut Creek City Council, so she's been in politics, and she was the mayor of Walnut Creek for a while. She earned her doctorate degree from Santa Clara University School of Law and her BA from the University of Arizona. I also did a search to see if I could find out anything more about her. I wanted to know who was appointed her. She was appointed by the governor, first by Governor Edmund Brown. So this goes back a while. Is that Jerry? Or is that his father? And then she was reappointed in 2022 by Governor Newsom. She was elected to serve as the president in May of 2024, so that's relatively recently. And this is her second time serving as board president, as she previously held the position from November 2020 to August 2023. One of the questions that was perplexity asked is, what are her main priorities as president of the Medical Board of California? We already know most of this. I'll be going into it in the video here. She wants to develop a physician's health and wellness program, apparently to the exclusion of almost anything else. It's very focused on that. She wants to revise physician licensing questions. This was also the first meeting I went to, which I believe was August. 3 meetings ago. They meet quarterly. This was practically the whole meeting, just talking about one question. They wanted to encourage physicians to disclose if they had substance issues. And legislative advocacy. Well, again, she's working on a legislative proposal to formalize the physician health program, modeling best programs from successful programs nationwide. This initiative seeks to foster a culture of wellness in medicine and improve healthcare quality across California. But let's hear some of her own words and how she describes her job and what her job is and what she's doing. So let me start by just giving you a little flavor of the meeting. This was the meeting in November 2024.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to see a full complement of board members here with us for the medical board meeting. This is an official business meeting of the Medical Board of California, and disruptions of the board's business will not be tolerated. Government Code Section 11126.5 allows the board to remove people who willfully interrupt a meeting and to clear the room if order cannot be restored by removing or muting the disruptive people.
So I don't doubt that these disruptions have really happened. Then there's good reason to say that. If you sit through all the public comments in these meetings, there's some absolutely horrific stories, a lot of wrongful deaths. But there's also a sense that people did try to go through channels. They tried to work things out. Something went wrong. They know something went wrong. And what they don't know is that the Medical Board of California exists primarily to protect doctors and to protect the profession. Exactly the opposite of what they say they do, protecting the public. So anyway, let's continue.
So moving right along, agenda item 2, public comments on items not on the agenda. Before I ask for public comments, I would like to ask individuals planning to make comments to not discuss pending complaints, pending licensing applications, or pending disciplinary actions that may come before the board for a decision. Such discussions are considered ex parte communications, as they could provide information to the members that is outside of the record in violation of the Administrative Procedure Act. Therefore, such discussions could create a conflict and lead to a board decision being challenged in Superior Court. The board can receive comments regarding the board's processes in general, but it cannot receive comments on specific case circumstances where the decision is still pending.
So there's a big problem with this. If you can't discuss pending complaints, what can you talk about? All you can talk about is vague policy issues. There's another problem in that they take years to process a complaint. So you're going to have to wait years to be able to say it, and then you can only talk about it after the fact. And it's even worse than that because they don't talk to you at all during an investigation. You're just, once you've submitted that form, that's it. They're technically breaking the law by doing that. They're supposed to talk to you when they do an investigation, but they don't bother. It completely invalidates their investigations. But for some reason, it's become accepted. So if you go to the medical board, you'll be able to talk. Nobody will say a word. They'll just kind of look at you. You won't have any idea if they understood, if they care. And that's it. And that's it. And nothing will ever happen. I mean, nothing. Less than like 2 or 3% does any action at all happen. So you're going to be largely wasting your time if you go to one of these meetings. Or if you even file a complaint with the Medical Board of California.
In addition, the board requests the public to address the board as a whole and not individual members. Again, please be aware that public comment during this agenda item should provide information to the board members and is not a discussion between the board members and the public. The only action board members can take is to listen to comments and decide whether they'd like a future agenda item on the topic. No other action can be taken on the item at this meeting. Though this may seem at times like the board members are not being responsive, following these guidelines is critical to ensure the rules of the Open Meeting Act are followed and to avoid compromising the speaker's goals or the board's mission.
Well, I don't like this one at all. First of all, I'm a big believer in individual accountability. And they don't believe that at all. It is so obvious and apparent from everything they do. And this is one of the worst examples, actually, that the board members just sit there passively while you talk to them. There's never any engaging. There's never any learning. There's never any follow-up questions. You might as well be talking to some AI robots or something. They don't take action in the future ever. Nothing ever happens. So rarely that I can pretty comfortably say nothing will ever happen, even in the worst cases. But she also quoted the Open Meeting Act as justifying this. And I have noticed that a lot of these public meetings, they bring that up all the time. That and the HIPAA laws, they just interpret all sorts of, however they want to, the privacy laws or medical records. But I've seen government meeting people like interpret this in opposite ways. So I did look it up in this case. And here it is right here. I usually use Claude, but I use ChatGPT now because it's kind of good at local political information. So I said, the president of the Medical Board of California claims board members cannot comment or ask questions from citizens who address the board because it would violate rules of the Open Meeting Act. Is this true? ChatGPT replies, no, that claim is misleading. The Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act, which governs California state boards, including the Medical Board of California, does not prohibit board members from commenting or asking questions in response to public comments. What the Act does prohibit is engaging in discussions or taking action on items not on the agenda unless they meet certain exceptions. However, the board members can ask clarifying questions, make brief responses to statements or questions, provide references to staff for factual information, request that a matter be placed on a future agenda. A complete refusal to engage with the public under the claim that it violates open meeting laws is an overly restrictive interpretation of the Act. So we'll call that misleading. Very, very shaky grounds, but it's simply not true. Most of the meeting in November was discussing what's called the Physicians' Health and Wellness Program. It's a program the medical board has been working to set up that is intended to address the problem of drug abusing physicians. They call that substance abuse. The medical board has been working on this for years, and they've already failed once in a real major way. They had their program fully implemented and was shut down by the California state legislature. But they're still going at it full tilt. Ms. Lawson has been a passionate advocate for it. I would say she has almost a single-minded focus. She does have the entire board on her side. They seem to be true believers. Before the vote on it, they all, with one exception, they all spoke out in favor of it. But there's some major, major problems with the program itself, if you even want to call it a program. I was briefly a program manager in Silicon Valley. I would not call this a program. They don't even have funding for it. They're just going straight to the legislature. They've got some loopy plan where they're going to get some nonprofit, get to be named nonprofit. It's just a very sketchy program. But let's just start hearing what she has to say about it.
Because we're here today to discuss a very important legislative proposal. It's the potential establishment of a physician health and wellness program in California again. This initiative reflects our shared commitment to protecting patients while also addressing the complex challenges faced by those who provide care.
I'm going to try to avoid going down the rabbit hole on this one because I think in a way it's a distraction to kind of lead people away from the much more immense problems this organization has. Ms. Lawson goes on to describe the previous failure with this program, but it seems to me they just approach this by trying to address the concerns with the previous program and maybe improving it, rather than looking at, is something really fundamentally wrong with what we're doing and the way we're going about it. I didn't see any creative options on the table. Now, I've just been going to their meetings, the last 3 meetings, so I don't have all the history on it, certainly. But I don't see any attempt to find the root cause. Apparently, one guy said later, the physicians who get addicted to substances, it happens the exact same rate as the normal population. But they haven't really made a case why doctors need their own special program, why they can't just use the one the rest of us use. But let's hear what you have to say on this.
And I think we should begin by candidly acknowledging our past. California's previous diversion program failed to meet the standards of accountability and effectiveness that patients and the public deserve. Multiple audits highlighted systemic shortcomings, including inadequate monitoring, poor safeguards, a lack of consistent enforcement, and that ultimately led to the program's termination. These failures caused real harm, and we must honor those lessons by ensuring any future program is built on a foundation of rigorous accountability and public trust. However,
well, accountability and public trust sound like a good idea. So what's the however?
The absence of such a program here in California has created a very real void. California is now one of only a few states in the country that do not have a physician health program, placing us behind nearly every other state in addressing physician impairment.
This same point is made over and over and over again when they talk about this physician's health and wellness program. And to me, it just shows a really, really stunning lack of creativity and really thinking through the program. Um, Several of the other board members brought this up, brought the same point up, not just Miss Lawson. And they bring in experts from out of state and the programs they have. But one person at the last board meeting said it best: we're California. We don't have to do things the same way other states do. And doing nothing in this case might be better. I don't see at all why doctors should get their own special program for this. They should be in the same program the rest of citizens are in. I mean, do contract managers, my profession, do we have our own program? If I had a substance problem, which I do not, even though you guys claim I do, or for that matter, accountants, some other group that is licensed by the state. Is there a problem with substance abusing accountants? Now, I know life-threatening airline pilots, you should take a look at what they do. They don't approach these things the way you do at all. So I think you've been very limited in your worldview on this. But I want to tell you a little bit of an anecdote, if you don't mind. That's maybe a little bit of a lesson about why everybody else is doing something might not be necessarily the right way to go about things. Years ago, decades ago, let's put it that way, a long time ago, I was in a graduate program in public policy at San Diego State University, and I had an internship at the City of San Diego Personnel Department. And when I got the internship, they actually assigned me to employee health and wellness issues, which I really don't like. I just don't care for medical issues. It's not it's not an area of interest of mine. But I did it, and they had one specific problem they were kind of stumped by. It was the lifeguard service. They knew, of course, that to be a lifeguard in San Diego, you have to be a very strong ocean swimmer. They do rescues all the time here. But they weren't sure about the eye standards, what the vision standards could be. And for the life of me, I can't remember if they didn't have them at all, or if they set them too high and they were getting sued, or if they set them too low and they were worried about it. I just don't remember. But they wanted me to come up with a rational basis for setting vision standards. And in my late 20s or whatever I was then, I thought, well, wouldn't it be fun to get different photographs that show different acuities of somebody actually, a lifeguard out in the ocean doing a rescue, and have this is what it looks like at 2020, this is what it looks like at 2030, this is what it looks like at 2040. Presumably they get more blurry as they go along. So I dragged the city photographer, who was delighted at the opportunity. He got all these lenses out to do it, and I got the lifeguards. They weren't necessarily happy about it, but I made them go in the water. So they didn't mind that much. It was kind of a duty thing for them. They liked it, actually. But it just didn't work. The human eye is just very different from the camera. Apparently everybody knows that. Every photographer knows that. But all I got was a bunch of blurry gray. It just didn't show anything. So that failed, and I didn't really know what to do, because the deadline for a board like this was coming up, where we were supposed to present it. And I just started calling around other cities. Hey, what do you guys do for lifeguard? Just very much like you're doing with this thing. Nobody really knew. So, I was calling Australia, New York, Florida, all over the place. It was just an excuse to do something. It was overkill for the project, probably. And I think one guy in Florida said, well, we just do 2040, corrected to 2020. Because they can wear glasses. And I think he wasn't even that sure. He said they were just kicking that around. I said, that sounds good. So I took that one, which he was just unsure about. I don't even think it was necessarily a policy, but he said it. He said those words. I took it. I wrote it down and justified it somehow. I think this is your best bet. Nothing wrong with a lifeguard wearing glasses. They've got to be able to navigate to the drowning person once they throw them off in the lifeguard center. And since that happened, I think, if you called around now, and I forget how I found this out, but that standard has been adopted all over the world, I think. From my dumbass way of going about it, everybody just copied it. Nobody put new thought into it. Maybe somebody has, but you kind of get the point. So a little bit of a postscript to this story. I live not far from the beach in San Diego, and a couple of summers ago, I was down at the beach. I go for these late afternoon, early evening swim, and I'm not a great swimmer. And this particular day, the water was kind of rough. I went out anyway, but I just decided, I better swim back in. The currents were just too weird, too strong for me. And then I heard some female, very faint voice, help, help. Somebody's yelling for help, and I couldn't see. The waves were kind of sloshing at me, and then I saw her. It was a young woman, maybe 14 years old or so, the girl, and she was in a rip current. She was in trouble. I don't know how serious. Her head was above water, but she was in trouble. So I decided to go into the rip current, even though I'm not a strong ocean swimmer at all, and just ended up having 2 drowned people instead of 1. But I knew that we were right in front of the lifeguard tower. I mean, it was right there. And I know how good these guys are. I knew they'd get out quickly. So I swam over to her, got a hold of her, and was able to hold her above and get things calmed down a little bit. But I don't know how to rescue people. I'm not an ocean swimmer. The universal sign for paging a lifeguard or calling a lifeguard, put your hand up and down in the water, which I guess is similar to what you'd look like if you're in trouble. They see that, they'll come out. So we did that a bunch of times, and nobody was coming out. And it was just like 50 feet away. It was not. We were not way out in the ocean. We were in trouble, but we weren't way out. So I mean, did a couple times they weren't coming out, and I had to get her out myself, which I did somehow. You swim sideways through a rip current, not straight into it. So we swam sideways for a while. I got her out. We got hit by a couple big waves. It's not pretty. It was not a pretty risk. I was like coughing. She was fine. She was in better shape than I was. She thanked me, and I left. And then I saw the lifeguard coming back, after I recovered a little bit. And I go, where were you? I had to pull a kid out of a rip current. He goes, oh, somebody had a dog without a leash on. I had to go take care of that. So I guess I don't know what the moral of this is. Long digression, but I think attention is more important than your vision necessarily. And as a person who does have attention issues, I don't say that lightly. I want to get back to introducing Kristina Lawson now. The lesson for the board in general: who cares what other states are doing? Do the right thing, do the good thing, and do it for all of us. Not making special programs for people.
I also want to point out that our societal understanding of substance abuse and mental health has evolved significantly over the last 15 years since the diversion program was terminated. We now recognize these as medical conditions that require compassion and treatment rather than stigma and punishment.
Okay, this comment I find to be disturbing, to say the least. One thing I have learned in this horrible journey I have been on is that the stigma of mental illness is very real, even for something as common as ADHD, probably around 5% of the population. And the stigma comes primarily from 2 professionals. One, it comes from the mental health professions themselves, primarily psychiatry, psychology, clinical psychologists, the people officially allowed by the system to treat mental illness, what they call mental illness. And the second profession it comes from is the legal profession, and to a lesser extent, politicians who equate everybody, no matter what their mental issue is or mental condition is, they treat them all as the same as the lunatic ranting on the corner. That's the way they view the world. It comes from the mental health profession and the legal profession. And the worst of the worst is the Medical Board of California. If you have an issue with a mental health professional, in my case, one that I never even met, who claimed he was giving me treatment, non-consensual, doesn't matter. They won't investigate it. And being accused or filing a complaint about a mental health professional is itself considered to be a mental illness in their worldview. The Medical Board of California not only defended the criminal fraud, the liar who did this, they actually helped him form his case. They have now volumes of information they have created, volumes of text about even new conditions they have come up with for me. It's outrageous. If you want to look where the stigma of mental illness comes from, look at the Medical Board of California itself. They are a carrier of the stigma of mental illness.
I want to take a moment before we begin to thank our board staff and the task force for their dedicated work in developing the draft proposal before us today. Their efforts provide a very strong starting point for our discussion. And as we deliberate, I encourage us to focus on listening to the public, to stakeholders, and to each other so that we can identify opportunities to refine and build on this proposal in ways that best serve the people of California.
Okay, you'll notice how Ms. Lawson is only willing to listen to people who are willing to refine and build on the proposal she has submitted. I'm not going to do a review of the comments the public made. I don't think I'll be making a video about that. But there were hours and hours of testimony, people speaking passionately against it. And they weren't all members of the pitchfork crowd saying, oh, these drug addict doctors. These are very reasonable people with sound policy reasons why they thought this was just a bad idea. It's a horrible idea to do now. The Medical Board of California is an operational mess. They're a disaster. They shouldn't be looking at any new perks of any kind right now until they get their own house in order. The Medical Board of California, with one exception, did not listen to these people. They didn't listen. They didn't care. They did their debate after the public had spoke, and they were oblivious to what the citizens had said. People who took their own time to come and make comments and waited to be able to blurt out a comment without any feedback at all. And they were intelligent comments, sound public policy, logic, reason, emotion. They were good arguments, and they didn't listen, and they didn't care.
I think what we're trying to capture here with this expanded program is those, things I see from time to time in my law firm, right? Well, something seems off with that person. That doesn't seem like normal behavior. Hey, they didn't show up for work twice, right? And they keep calling out sick. These very subtle signs that something may be awry that right now we can't capture in our system in any meaningful way.
Well, I have to say, I'm glad I don't work in Miss Lawson's law firm. Can you imagine? Hey, Rob seems like he's a little off today. He must be shooting heroin. We better report him. The larger point is, she says her system doesn't capture this information in a meaningful way. Larger point is, their system doesn't capture anything in a meaningful way. There have been many, many examples where dozens of people have complained about the same doctor, extremely abusive behavior, and they didn't do anything. Their system doesn't capture anything. The Medical Board of California has a broken and dysfunctional system. It's a rigged system. It's a system that's rigged every way a system can be rigged. And it's absurd that they think they can construct what is essentially a surveillance system when they can't even build a basic complaint system that can professionally address complaints that citizens have about bad players in the medical profession and conduct investigations when necessary. Now, Ms. Lawson had done a great deal of consensus building on this proposal, at least among the board itself. even though it was a horrible program. They did ask pointed questions. It has no money. It has no organization. It has no nothing. It's not a program. But they were all in favor of it, with one exception. Uh, Escherich Watkins, he's apparently their dissident on the board. He's the only one that seems to even understand the basics of public policy and common sense. But he did speak out about it a little bit, so let's hear what he had to say as well.
Let's move to reality. This is what most people have experienced, including us on the panel. Right now, if in the real world, in a real like uniform standard case, we can come across a doctor that's substance abusing, that has violated probation many times, 2-3 times. He's been given citations, he's been given all of these things, and the board hasn't acted to actually revoke him. If you have a situation like we have in California, in your experience, where the patient advocates and the people's experience of the board is at that low trust level, right? How do we build, and I'm battling with this, how do we build the trust back? How do we as the members build the trust back with that community over there? And we bring in the doctors and say, how do we now create this environment that we can, actually say, hey, we stand behind this program, we want our doctors better, but we also want accountability for those folks that did not meet the standard.
What Mr. Watkins just said is a little bit shocking because he described a situation where a doctor is found to be impaired on the job, presumably, and has repeatedly proven that he can't be rehabilitated. The medical board will go out of its way to help that person anyway, to not do anything. That's really, really shocking. When for the rest of us, in my case in particular, just the accusation of drug use is all they need. And you're guilty. You're presumed to be guilty. And if you are ordered to take a urine test, I believe the medical board calls it biological fluid testing. If you're ordered, as I was, to take a urine test, which I think is unbelievably degrading, especially when it's couched as an order by someone you've never met, then in their worldview, you are considered a drug addict. Refusing to urinate for people is considered proof of drug addiction for the rest of us. But a more important point he made is simply about accountability. That's what this system should be. It should be to provide at least accountability. I don't think you'll ever get to justice, but at least accountability. And you have a system, the medical board has a system that is designed to prevent accountability, even the most basic kind of accountability. That is what the system actually does. There is a theory in systems theory, I believe it's called Hanlon's law, and it states the purpose of a system is not what it says it does, but what it actually does. And that is what the medical board actually does. They protect physicians, they prevent accountability, and they build a legal case. If you complain to the medical board about anything, they will first give your case to the person who you're complaining about. Let them build all their arguments. They'll never talk to you. They'll build an ironclad case. They'll have all their arguments again. So they actually also take away your legal rights. As far as public policy goes, the medical board is an abomination. But before the final vote was taken, Mr. Watkins made one more really important point that I think we should listen to before we get back to Ms. Lawson.
Would someone like to make a motion? There's a staff recommended motion.
I'll make the motion to adopt the staff's recommended motion. Is that it? I can't read it.
I think that works. Thank you.
A second.
Thank you. In a second. All right. Is there any further discussion?
Yes, just the last.
Mr. Watkins?
Just my last comment. The deal with this is I totally empathize with Dr. Elza, but right now We have all the stakeholders except the public, which we are mandated to protect, on board. That's a big consideration, and that's a big thing. This is the medical board. We fought so hard to get to this moment. I've been on this board, Mr. Chair, all of us, for this moment. This is that critical moment. And I wouldn't ask this if this wasn't very important. I can see the room. You can read the room. It is, we know what we want to do, but we just need to bring a team member up to par this moment. A team member that will fall back into their pain, back into their defensiveness if we don't listen to them. Because they did it once. After the first stakeholder meeting, they didn't even bother to come back into the second stakeholder meeting. A few did. There were many on the first meeting, not so many on the second meeting. And I was surprised. That's how you lose the relationship. It's just important for me. I know I'm babbling on, but that's how passionate I am about restoring relationships.
Mr. Watkins made a number of really good points in that edited statement, as well as throughout the meeting. But one of the more important ones he said is, you've lost the support of the public. Ms. Lawson obviously did a very good job of building consensus among the board members, 12 of the 13 anyway. They all agree with her. They all agree that this proposal should move forward, even though it's seriously flawed, to say the least. And the timing is just horrible. I mean, like your entire organization is falling apart when they're doing this. But the medical board obviously does not have support of the public. Mr. Watkins says he could read the room. I don't think that should take any great talent. The room hated it. With a few exceptions, people spoke out passionately against this proposal, and they weren't all the pitchfork crowds. There were some very, very good, sound policy reasons why this is just a bad idea. So absolutely the medical board has lost the support of the public. As he pointed out, the very group you're supposed to be supporting. It's not supposed to be some little club for doctors. And Mr. Watkins is a coach. He's not a doctor or a lawyer. So in a way, in my opinion, that's a more important profession. But he also talked as a coach about the importance of restoring relationships. Medical Board of California has many, many broken relationships. But I don't think they can be restored. I know they can't with me. I think it's too late. I get reminded a little bit about song lyrics. Are kind of inappropriate in a way for this video because they're a little bit sexual in nature or relationship in nature. It's from a Dan Fogelberg song. Moments fleet taste sweet within the rapture when precious flesh is greedily consumed. And mystery's a thing not easily captured, and once deceased, not easily exhumed. The same way with relationships. Once they're gone, they're pretty much gone forever. They are with mine. I have irreconcilable differences now with the Medical Board of California. I will be opposing them very actively in the coming months and years. So you've lost me. I've tried for 5 years. It's not like I didn't try. I begged, and I'm absolutely done bending my knee to this organization. But as a coach, Mr. Watkins probably know that you also emphasize the basics first. In football, you would make sure you're good at blocking, kicking, and tackling before you do any bizarre trick plays or something like that. The medical board does not do the blocking, kicking, and tackling. They can't even process complaints. So it is ridiculous that they are doing something like this. I wasn't going to make this a video about the Physicians Health and Wellness Program. This was just to review Ms. Lawson's performance. But this is her main vision. This is what she thinks the medical board should be doing. The rest of the medical board was oblivious to the public, completely oblivious. It's like they weren't even there. It's like the people there might have been talking into the air, because if they're listening Who knows? But they didn't care. They made it clear they didn't care because they went right along and did what they were going to do anyway, even though the medical board is absolutely falling apart. And I also think he's right when he says this is a critical moment for the Medical Board of California. Even though I've only been involved with these board meetings, you might even call it involvement, listening to it, paying attention to it, since the August meeting, when I just was at my wit's end as somebody must care out there. And I found out nobody does care at all. They are willing to do anything to support a bad doctor. They will destroy anybody's life to do it, and they simply don't care. It's horribly dysfunctional. The Medical Board of California is practically the poster child for aloof, elitist, and out-of-touch government. And it's really shameful that this has been allowed to continue. So anyway, after Mr. Watkins made his impassioned and fairly diplomatic comments about the Physicians' Health and Wellness Program, Ms. Lawson called the final vote to make the decision, to have the board make the decision. Let's watch how they did that.
I gave you a lot of time to speak, Mr. Watkins. Let's call, unless there's any new comment that someone would like to make, let's have the roll call vote, please. Ms. Strother?
Dr. Ayala Rodriguez?
Yes.
Dr. Bullock? Yes. Ms. Chung?
Yes.
Dr. Helzer?
Yes.
Ms. Mitchell?
Yes.
Dr. Mahmood?
Yes.
Ms. Rimke?
Yes.
Dr. Thorpe?
Yes.
Ms. Torres?
Yes.
Dr. Sy?
Yes.
Mr. Watkins? Dr. Yip?
Yes.
Ms. Lawson?
Yes. All right, that motion carries. Thank you all for an excellent discussion, and we'll look forward to checking in with you a lot.
So there you have the final vote tally. Only one member, Mr. Watkins, was opposed to this ill-conceived proposed program, and 12 members were in favor of it. So getting back to Ms. Lawson, because this video is a review of her performance and her tenure. If she had had multiple programs she was working on, I could have talked about those. I do like saying positive things if I can. Nobody has done that about me, obviously. I've heard the medical board was involved in a full-blown character assassination of me. I've never heard. They've told vicious lies about me. I'm not going to talk about that here. But if she had multiple programs, we could have looked at other ones that might have been good. If she had been working on their severe operational problems, obviously that would have been important. But at least for me, it's now too late. You've lost me, and I think you've lost a lot of people. We have to find another way. I don't know what that is, but I do have faith that we'll find it. We'll have to bypass you. We'll have to do something. And although it wasn't my interest before, this Physicians' Health and Wellness Program, I will be actively opposing it. It is my hope, for example, that this legislative sponsor you're going to find, I want that to be a political death sentence. Now, I don't know that I can do that, but I can try. I want it to be, whoever does that, I want it to be bad news for them, that they have done something so foolish, at least until you fix the medical board. And I've come to the conclusion it can't be fixed for a couple reasons. You got a bad structure, you've got some bad laws. They can change laws when they want to change them. They're not changing the ones they want to change. They're only changing, they can't change, they don't change the ones that need to be changed. They only change the ones they want to change, the ones that benefit physicians. It's a horrible agency. It's bad in every way an agency can be bad. But one of the problems is people only find that out one at a time. And they'll spend dozens, maybe even hundreds of hours until they realize they wasted their time. I no longer call it time wasting. I call it time theft. And I think that would be an interesting study to do. Just how much time are they stealing from the citizens of California for no results whatsoever? Nothing. They don't do anything. If you have about a 3% chance of anything at all happening if you file a complaint with the medical board, if it's even 3%. I think it's less than that. I'll have to run the numbers again. But I would avoid the medical board at all costs. Filing a complaint works to your disadvantage. You'd be better to file a lawsuit right off the bat if you can afford it. If I had to say something positive about her, I guess the meetings are relatively professionally managed. I wish the technology would allow people to show their faces so their video cams worked. The policy of not letting the board ask questions or any feedback at all, it just makes it cold and impersonal, and just makes it feel like you're like going before the king or something. These people are not on your side. That's just very, very clear. But she was not trigger happy on the time. 3 minutes is generally enough. I went to another meeting here in San Diego, Behavioral Health Advisory Board. They do 2 minutes. I haven't heard a single person be able to get their point out in 2 minutes. They let it go full 3 minutes, and they're not real trigger happy on that. They at least let people finish their sentences. That's about all. The only good thing I can say about it. Highly dysfunctional, corrupt in many ways. So probably not directly money-wise, but it definitely is not looking out for the citizens of California. It definitely is not protecting us from criminal elements in the medical profession. In fact, it protects the criminal elements in the medical profession, as I know only too well. To sum all this up in a single phrase, the Medical Board of California is a failed agency. I know a lot about failure, and this is what failure looks like. The Medical Board of California has failed. Now, the Physicians' Health and Wellness Program, as outrageous as it is, I think it's just a distraction. I'm not saying that people do not sincerely think it's the right thing to do, because some of you clearly do. But I compare it to there's a fire in the kitchen in your house. It's a bad fire. It's going to burn your whole house down. And you guys are all arguing about the color of the drapes you want to buy for the living room. But the kitchen is on fire. So it seems as though they want everybody to join them in the living room, arguing about the color of the drapes, or if we should buy these new drapes in the first place, while the kitchen is on fire. So everybody will be arguing passionately that this is the wrong time to be buying new drapes, that we shouldn't be doing it now. And this will maybe take a year or two of arguing about this new program you have. And meanwhile, the house is burning down. Anyway, that wraps it up for this. I know this video is probably too long, but I do thank you for listening to this video or watching, and I thank you for your attention.